saucer, but a mothership. It began to move off. "Someone take me down to the road quick," said Adamski. "That ship has come looking for me, and I don't want to keep them waiting." Adamski, McGinnis, and Bailey hopped into the car and drove a half-mile down the road. The ship seemed to be following them. Turning onto a dirt road, they drove along a shallow canyon. Adamski pointed to the base of a hill that was where he wanted to set up his telescope and camera. As they arrived at the spot, the ship was directly overhead. Adamski leaped from the car and unpacked his equipment. He told McGinnis and Bailey to leave him and rejoin the others. He wanted to be alone. They should return for him in an hour. The car sped away with a trail of dust. Meanwhile, the silver ship was drifting off, like a cloud in the wind. Soon it had disappeared over the mountains. Adamski was alone with his equipment and thoughts. He attached the camera to the telescope, and adjusted the eyepiece. Then his attention was caught by a flash in the sky. And then he saw something. It was a beautiful small craft drifting between two mountain peaks, and settling into a cove. It was a flying saucer. He began to take pictures. With another flash, the saucer moved out of sight. Adamski stood there, camera in hand, awed by the proximity of the saucer. He wondered if its occupants knew he had been taking pictures. And he fell into a reverie. His thoughts were interrupted. Someone was standing about a quarter of a mile away, motioning for Adamski to come over. As his companions, who would later sign an affidavit attesting to having witnessed the encounter, watched from a distance, Adamski walked toward the man. Strangely, he felt no fear. Hands thrust into the pockets of his windbreaker, he walked confidently and expectantly, as if approaching an old and trusted friend. The man was wearing a jumpsuit. His long blonde hair was blowing in the wind. He was smiling. Adamski halted an arm's length from the stranger. Now, for the first time, I fully realized that I was in the presence of a man from space, a human being from another world. The beauty of his form surpassed anything I had ever seen. And the pleasantness of his face freed me of all thought of my personal self. I felt like a little child in the presence of one with great wisdom and much love. And I became very humble with myself, and he was radiating a feeling of infinite understanding and kindness, with supreme humility. The spaceman extended his hand. It was slender with fingers like those of an artistic woman. Adamski reached out to shake it. But the spaceman shook his head, and gently placed his palm against Adamski's. Adamski regarded the man with awe. He was clean-shaved and youthful in appearance. He had a high forehead, green eyes, and a smile that revealed glistening teeth. His jumpsuit was brown, with a radiant sheen. He wore no jewelry, carried no weapon. The two men began to communicate via telepathy, gestures and facial expressions. The spaceman was from Venus, he informed Adamski. His visit was friendly, but serious in purpose. For he had come to warn us of the dangers of nuclear explosions, and in dangers for both the Earth, and its neighbors in the solar system. Adamski noticed the saucer in which he had arrived. Bell-shaped and translucent, it was hovering just off the ground in a cove. A scout ship, explained the spaceman, that had emerged from the mother ship seen earlier. As the wind blew their hair and ruffled the bushes around them, Adamski put questions to the spaceman. How did his ship operate? Did the Venusians believe in a god? Do they experience death? The spaceman answered the questions. But when Adamski asked to take his picture, he shook his head. He led Adamski over to the saucer. It wobbled in the wind, and prismatic colors flashed on its surface. Adamski found himself speechless and overcome with joy. Adamski said, "Can I go for a ride?" The spaceman just shook his head. "Can I just step inside and take a look around?" "No, not at this time." Then the spaceman said goodbye and reboarded his ship. It rose, glided over the mountains, and disappeared from view. Adamski was soon rejoining his party, and filling them in on what had happened. He and the others returned to the site, to examine the spaceman's footprints and to look for traces of the saucer. Then they drove into town for dinner. Two days later, Arizona newspaper ran a story about the encounter. More newspaper coverage followed, and it was not long before Adamski himself was writing a full account of his experience. The manuscript found its way to the desk of Waveney Girvan, editor-in-chief of a British publishing house. A UFO enthusiastic, Girvan says that it made an immediate appeal to me. "I felt I was handling dynamite." Though fearing the book might bring ridicule upon his imprint, he decided to publish it. And in the fall of 1953, Flying Saucers Have Landed appeared in bookstores. Co-authored by Adamski and Desmond Leslie, a British ufologist who wrote the historical portion of the book. It describes in detail the encounter in the desert, and it also included the latest, and most sensational photos of spacecrafts that Adamski had taken through his telescope. In its concluding chapter we are told, "Now I am hoping that the spaceman will return again, and that then I will be granted more time with him. Believe me, I am saving up questions. And many of my friends are also accumulating questions. Couldn't it be possible that he might actually let me have a ride in his ship? He would not have to invite me twice." The book sold well, and Adamski's fame spread. Newspapers ran features on him, the amateur astronomer who claimed to have photographed spaceships and to have chatted with a spaceman. He began to receive lecture invitations from around the country, in particular from the UFO clubs that were springing up. And increasingly, people were appearing on his doorstep, saucer enthusiasts, the curious, and the just plain batty. Meanwhile, his contacts with the space people, or space brothers, as he liked to call them, he continued, and grew more spectacular. And in 1955 he published, with Abelard Schumann, another book, to describe these further encounters. It was titled Inside the Spaceships. If Flying Saucers Have Landed, it strained his credibility with many readers, Inside the Spaceships, which included additional photos, and stretched it to its limits. Desmond Leslie, in a foreword to the book, puts his finger on the problem. "This amazing document," says Leslie, "may be taken in one of two ways. It may be either believed or disbelieved. The reader must make up his own mind on this fundamental question." Inside the Spaceships takes up the tale 3 months after the desert encounter. In his home on Palomar, Adamski was feeling restless. and he found welling up inside him an inexplicable urge to visit Los Angeles. Taking a bus into the city and checking into his usual hotel, he recalled a certain student of his, a young woman,